Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, 12 after 8 o'clock. Welcome to the program. We do hope you will become a part of the conversation. The WhatsApp line, which I always give out on a daily basis, is 0617660355. Please do keep us company for the next 2 hours. Our first guest is Dr. Theo De Jager, Managing Director of South African Agri Initiative. A very good morning to you, Dr. De Jager. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. It's always a privilege to share your platform.
Thank you indeed. How come you're not at COP27 in Egypt?
I am. This is exactly where I am.
Are you really? Are you talking to me from your hotel room?
Yes, I am.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. What's the vibe like? We'll get into what you are going to be doing at COP27. It is the second day of the conference. How did the first day unfold? And are you picking up a very positive energy? Because in the past, these COPs were really a lot of talk shops and promises that were made weren't necessarily followed through. Are you kind of getting a sense of something different, excitement, positivity, commitment?
Julie, this is my 12th COP.
Okay.
So I'm one of the dinosaurs around here. I have seen the moods coming and going on COP. What makes this one different is not only that it's in Africa for the first time since 2011 in Durban, it is also that this is the first COP with a very pertinent focus on food and agriculture. Everything around here is either about energy or food and agriculture. And apart from the wonderful atmosphere in Sharm el-Sheikh, apart from the amazing Egyptian culture which surrounds us here in Sinai, the mood here is a bit tense between farmers and NGOs. There's a massive push here against animal-based proteins. Farmers are very much in the crosshairs for greenhouse gas emissions, and the science around it is what the debate is all about. So many scientists from universities all over the world are arguing the data, how to measure emissions, whether one should only measure the emissions, or in the case of agriculture, also look at the other side of the balance sheet, where we are the only industry, the only sector of the global economy which also sequestrate the carbon emitted by our own and other sectors of society. And then, of course, there's the very big debate on whether our food systems should be radically transformed to more regenerative agriculture, whether it is possible actually to feed the world and feed 2 billion more people in the next 2.5 decades from regenerative agriculture. And I would say top of the agenda is the financing. The Green Climate Fund is here in full force, but apart from them, there's so many other institutions who are arguing that we should prioritize on a global scale the financing of transition of our food systems, but also how to implement such financing mechanisms and how to make sure that it actually ripples down to the farmers on grassroots level.
And that's key, isn't it? How it actually gets to the people on the ground who need it the most. I'm going to come back to that very important topic in a minute or two. I also understand that world leaders will only be there for another day, and that is today. Thereafter, they would leave behind all of their deputies and heads of, their different ministries to start possibly horse training and to start drilling down to the facts, to commit and to make sure that this is no longer just a talk shop, because we have reached a very crucial stage globally regarding climate change and and its impacts not only on you and I here in South Africa, but globally. Having said that, I have to squeeze this question in. I was very surprised to see Boris Johnson, of all people, at COP27. What's he doing there, very especially in light of the fact that the new Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, has also made an appearance there? Is there some sort of a clash?
No, I don't think so. I also only briefly saw him running by some of the farmers engaged with him, and I think he is part of the high-level team of the UK, who is very influential in the COP deliberations. The UK has got a very comprehensive climate plan, and they are very clear about their targets and how they want to go about also mobilizing captains of industry behind that plan. Actually, every country has a national commitment which they filed here at COP, but not all of the countries are that clear about it, and not all of these plans are as comprehensive as this. So his being here is being seen widely as putting weight behind the push from the UK to make sure that their national determined commitment can be sold here, and also that they can sell the dream a bit wider than only within the borders of the UK.
Okay. I know a little while ago I came across a report by the Scottish leader who took umbrage to the fact that I think it was the UK suggesting that that farmers, large-scale farmers, be taxed, be burdened with a gas emission tax from the animals that they're farming. To me, it sounded like a very ridiculous notion, because how are they going to measure it? Have you come across that statement anywhere at all? Do you believe it's feasible, or is it some kind of a joke? I mean, I'm kind of wondering. And perhaps it's not that funny when you think about it, when we understand the scale of livestock farming globally.
Julie, it's unfortunately not a joke. And Scotland is not the only country where this debate is really heating up. We see the same in Oceania, Australia, New Zealand. There's even talk about that down south in our country. And this is why we have such a strong constituency of farmers leaders here at COP, stronger than ever before. There are more than 80 leaders of national and continental farmers organizations here. You see, the notion that livestock farming is actually the main culprit in greenhouse gas emissions, and especially the numbers they quote on methane emissions from ruminants, from cattle, is a misconception. It's a misnomer. You cannot compare the emissions from cattle, which is in a very short cycle. The cycle is around 10 to 12 years, where methane comes from the mouths of ruminants. Then it goes up into the atmosphere, where it is being broken down to mostly water and carbon in between 10 and 12 years. And that returns to the soils in the form of rain or carbon. And the very grass which the ruminants graze on their pastures is also sequestrating that carbon again. And that cycle has forever been there. Ever since we've had ruminants on this planet, we had that cycle as part of our atmospheric dynamics. You cannot compare that with the fossil fuel driven industry such as transport and energy. And also, it is not 34%. For sure, it is not. Simply because agriculture is much more than just livestock. There's a very big push here for regenerative agriculture, where you reduce or even do away with the use of fertilizers. But to do that, you really need the manure from the livestock industry.
Absolutely. Mm.
So, the scientists here are really wrestling at this moment with the data and also the consequences of the way the data is interpreted.
Okay, and tell me, have pesticides been permanently banned for a while now globally? Because we do know that if we ingest foods that have been sprayed by poisonous pesticides, I guess that's the reason why we have seen the resurgence of all different types of cancers, which we've never heard about 50 and 100 years before. So, is that still a bone of contention, or is that off the table completely now?
No, it is not being banned globally. I think the regulations around it is really getting stricter and stricter every year. And that is a small part of the debate here at COP. The biggest part of that debate is actually being um, argued in the health sector. Now, the big issue here is whether there are alternatives which can maintain food security in the competition between man and insects when it comes to the use of insecticides. Can organic alternatives really protect harvests to the extent that we can maintain the production of more food on less land and with less and less inputs? Um, and how will that impact on food security, especially in the aftermath of COVID, but also now in the reality of a war in the Ukraine, where nearly 30% of the world's grain that crosses borders is at stake. Um, so yes, farmers here too are having quite heated debates on where to go with pesticides, and then if pesticides were to be banned, what would be the alternative to protect our crops against um, insects and other pests?
Absolutely. And now we come to the heart of the matter, which is very close to your heart. Obviously, for the first time ever, you've told me you've been at 12 previous COPs, but for the first time ever, uh, food systems, we as South Africa will be highlighting a food systems pavilion. What does that mean for agriculture as a whole and for us as South Africa? When, at this pavilion, what is it that we're actually trying to promote? The great produce out of South Africa, the fact that we are a fertile enough land that we could produce more and more food, that our country won't suffer the issues around food scarcity. What is this food pavilion going to push forward? What are you hoping for? And how does it put South Africa firmly on the map as far as COP27 and future COPs are concerned?
There are two pavilions here, Julie. There's the South African pavilion, which is very neat and very um, hospitable and friendly, and we are popping in there all the time. And then there's the Food Systems Pavilion, where farmers from across the globe, but also partners of farmers from elsewhere in the value chain, are having um, literally every half an hour these mini symposia where we try to put the science on the table and try to influence the processes in the negotiation part of COP. Now, to put it into perspective for you, this is the 27th COP. So 27 years ago in Kyoto, in Japan, this agreement was signed between countries across the globe to mitigate and adapt to climate change. But in that protocol, there was nothing about agriculture. It was not even mentioned. In the run-up to the Paris Agreement in 2015, there was quite a lot of hustle from the farmer side to have agriculture included into a new protocol, the Paris Agreement. And we were disappointed at the end of that COP because the matter had only been touched upon by references to food security. It was only in Katowice in 2018 that all hell broke loose on farming and agriculture and how we produce food and what we produce as food. And so then we started to push for an opportunity to have the farmers' voice heard. And when we heard that this particular COP here in Egypt, in Sharm el Sheikh, will have this specific focus on agriculture and food systems, we said we must come to this COP in our numbers, and we must make sure that we have an opportunity to have the farmers' voice heard. And this is what the Food Systems Pavilion is all about. And already in that pavilion, we really had a number of high-level speakers. We had very exciting discussions, and we engaged with the financiers, the captains of industry, the big food companies, the negotiators themselves, with politicians from across the globe, trying to make sure that there will be a livelihood for farmers also in consideration in the deliberations here at COP, and that the interest of the most vulnerable, the smallest farmers and the poorest farmers in the world, that will also be covered, because we know as farmers, if we had covered the interest of the smallest and the weakest, the bigger farmers will also have their interest well covered.
What does that mean for South Africa? We know there's been issues from in the past with the United States regarding selling and hoarding seed. And there have been lots of civil rights organizations all around the world protesting against that. How does the, people like yourself, people like, with the South African Agri Initiative and other such organizations push back against the ownership of seed and controlling of smaller farmers, and possibly even pushing them into poverty? And finally, to wrap up, food security. Should we in South Africa be concerned about it? And this whole issue regarding the control of seed, ownership of seed, would that ever be an issue we in South Africa and other developing nations need to worry about? Are these the burning issues that need to and will be covered by COP27?
Oh, yes, that debate is also rife here. Only last night we had a dinner event where farmers from across the globe met with NGOs. There's a very strong contingent of NGOs here pushing for the ownership of seed to be vested in farmers themselves. And one of the main speakers last night urged farmers not to buy improved seeds, but rather to put away some of the current harvest for next year again. Now, and in SAAI, where we have a very large part of our membership vested in the deep rural areas, not only smallholder farmers, but also communal farmers and peri-urban farmers. For us, the challenge is to produce more on less and with less. And you will not do that with just retaining your own seed. You need better genetics. There's only one way to produce more crops on less land and with less inputs, and that is with better technologies. And it's also
Can I come in here, Dr. Theo? Are you then perhaps suggesting genetically modified seed and food? Because there is a pushback on that issue as well. Again, that is linked with all of the newer diseases that we're seeing proliferating all around the world.
It is not only genetically modified. Biotechnology does not only refer to genetically modified seed, it is also hybrid seeds. And whether that is on livestock or whether it is on crops, it is all about having more from one plant, having more from one animal. And this is why it is so important that farmers walk very closely next to the scientists who are developing new knowledge and new technologies. And we firmly believe that it is not possible to feed 2 billion more mouths in our lifetime if we just keep on farming with the genetics we have available today. We need to improve that. Just look at the numbers where in Africa the smallholders average harvest is less than 1 ton of maize per hectare, whilst with hybrid seeds, for example, in all over Europe, if you don't get 10 tons per hectare, you will go bankrupt. And that is not GMOs, that is just hybrid seeds. In Africa, there are only 3 countries which are allowed by law to farm with genetically improved seeds, and that is Egypt, Burkina Faso, and South Africa.
Okay, we need to wrap up. Thank you indeed for your deep insights. Let's just wrap up by asking you, what do you, as Dr. Theo De Jager from the South African Agri Initiative, want to come back home with? What is the good news that you're going to be bringing back to South Africa? And when you talk about getting more out of less land, more food out of less land, um, obviously, this is a very important discussion because climate change has a huge impact. We're talking droughts, we're talking torrential rains, we're talking floods. All of this is going to impact very, very big time on the outcomes that not only you, but everyone at COP27 is hoping for and working towards.
Julie, if you ask me about my personal expectations, I really hope that I can come back from this COP and tell the farmers in South Africa that we've made progress. That is already a luxury in the COP process. But the progress must be on 3 things: on the financing of transformation. Then no use we ask farmers to change the way in which they farm and to take better care of their soil health and of nature and biodiversity if there's not a financing mechanism to enable them to do so. Secondly, I really hope to beat up some of the demons in the debate, especially around the role of livestock and animal-based proteins. And thirdly, I really hope that we have the opportunity, like we've had in Glasgow, to make the farmer's voice heard in this debate, because agriculture is not only the oldest profession in the world, it is still today the biggest profession in the world. And if our main challenge is the eradication of poverty, there's only one way we can do that.
Absolutely.
That's through the creation of wealth. And agriculture can create more wealth in a shorter space of time and on a broader basis than any other sector of the economy of our continent.
Dr. Theo De Jager, the Managing Director of South African Agri Initiative, attending COP27 on behalf of all of us South Africans. Enjoy the conference, and we do look forward to chatting with you when you come home so that you can unpack all the salient features and issues of importance that we, the people on the ground, need to know. Because obviously COP27 and all of these talk shops are pitched at a very, very high level. So it will be your job to come home, break it down so that we can understand what has come out of it. Enjoy COP27, make your voice heard, and we look forward to our next chat. You go well.
Thank you so much.
That was Dr. Theo De Jager. Thoroughly enjoyed talking with him. And COP27 made that much more sense to me today after having talked with Dr. Theo De Jager. The time is 8:36 a.m. News and views right here on Salam Media.